Kitty.
Oh.
Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, June 15th school committee meeting. We will call the meeting to order at 6:34. And the first order of business is the approval of minutes, of which we have none. So we'll move along to public comment. Is there anybody here to speak to the school committee for public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to recognitions. Any recognitions, Mr. Carpenter?
I have none tonight.
Moving right along to reports and discussions. We have the first reading for the wellness policy, which is included in your packet. It is policy 80F, and it is the policy that the policy subcommittee has been working on for several months. And we have a draft before you. Does anybody from the policy subcommittee like to mention anything?
Well, I will.
Ms. Stout?
So one of the goals I've had is to make sure that we're moving in a direction of more protein and nutrition-rich foods and less sugar. And I haven't even gotten to looking at salt yet, but it seems as though we're going in that way. And one of the comments on here is that the American Heart Association, well, it doesn't say on here, the American Heart Association is suggesting that now children aged 2 to 18 should have 25 grams of sugar, added sugar, but not more a day. So I've proposed on here that no one item should have more than 25 grams of sugar.
Added sugar.
Added sugar, yes. So that's the points of the most interest to me.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to, Ms. Ryder?
On our current page 6 on the policy, under mealtime and scheduling, second bullet point, it mentions lunch being scheduled between 10 and 1 at the elementary school. There was a comment that at least at one of our elementary schools, that time period, which to me seems rather long, and especially 10 o'clock seems pretty far outside a typical lunch period, especially for a 5-year-old. It was mentioned that at one of the schools at least, that's the only way they can do it is by having that 3-hour time period. I would like to see that shortened. I think for kids to have lunch at 10 is awfully early, and then there's a long time period until dinner, especially if they're at an after-school program.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify, we're not going to read through this whole policy because the policy is 11 pages long. So it's not, even though this is our first reading, we're not going to be reading through the entire policy. It is available online, attached to our agenda for this evening. So if anybody would like to look at it, they can go to the school committee page on the website and look for tonight's meeting agenda, and you can read through the policy if you'd like. Mr. Duvall?
Is there a red line version available to us? Because I don't want to compare 10 pages to see what the differences are.
Would anybody on the policy subcommittee other than me like to comment on that?
I would just say that it's a fairly substantial, where when we did the policies last time, you and I were on there, and we just compared to the old ones, but the state has given us substantially different, so we started more from scratch than just modification.
Okay. Anybody else?
So this has nothing to do with the policy we had before?
It's substantially different.
That's why I'd like to see a red line version.
Ms. Ryder?
We originally had a red line version that we were working on, and for some reason that was foregone or in favor of this one, which was a cleaned up version that we were working on. But we do have a red line version. If somebody wants to go back and compare that to this final version, we have this final draft. Because we were working on a red line version that was comparing against an earlier draft. So it is possible there is a version somewhere that's close, that somebody, if they did a little work on it, would be able to give you. Make sense? Am I making sense? Sorry.
Okay. Any other comments on the wellness policy? Okay, so again, this is our first reading, so we will have this tonight, and then at our next meeting, which is next week, June 22nd, is when we hope to approve this policy to add it to our manual. Okay? And the next discussion is on subcommittee assignments. And a couple meetings ago, what I asked was for everybody to provide me with what their preferences would be on subcommittees. And at our last meeting, I did discuss how I was trying to break them apart as subcommittees, representatives, and liaisons. And what I did is I took what everybody requested. The 7 of you requested. I didn't actually put myself as any requests. I just filled in where was necessary. And the only liberty that I took, all right, let me back up one more step. So looking at the list of subcommittees, we have 4 subcommittees listed. And 2 of those subcommittees are policy and negotiations. And for this upcoming school year, it seems to be that the policy subcommittee is going to be needing to meet fairly regularly. I would say probably once, possibly even twice a month, to be able to get through several policies that Ms. McGuire pointed out that needs to be reviewed, as well as the Mass Association of School Committees have gone through the policies on their end to look for updates. So that subcommittee, as well as negotiation subcommittee, in which we are reviewing all of our units this year for contract negotiations, or all but one, I believe, negotiations. Those 2 subcommittees were the ones that I felt would be pretty intensive for the year. So my thought was that if each of us was on one or other of those 2 subcommittees, so that not one person had a substantial commitment to one of those 2 subcommittees. So going to where the liberty that I took is that Ms. Ryder suggested or requested to be on the policy subcommittee and the negotiations subcommittee, and we had 5 requests for policy and only 3 requests for negotiations, not including me. So the liberty that I took was putting the 4 of the 5 policy subcommittee requests, and then adding the 3 requests for negotiations, which were listed, and then I put myself on as the 4th for negotiations, again, just filling in where is necessary. I'm not saying that this is what should be the subcommittee list by any means. This is, like I said, this is purely what everybody requested. And it looks like it's all filled out except for the special education PAC liaison. So we would just be looking for a liaison for that. I am open to any discussion and conversation as to if anybody wants to swap out. If you want to say, hey, Mr. Russell, would you mind switching with me for this subcommittee, for that subcommittee? I don't have a problem with any of that. So I leave that open for discussion. Mr. Crafty.
I'll take the special education one, too.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Ryder.
I noticed on 3 of the subcommittees you have a serious imbalance. You've got, on 2 of them, you've got 3 Chatham people and 1 Harwich person. And on 1 you have 3 Harwich people and 1 Chatham person. I don't think that's a good idea. Nor do I think our constituency would be very happy with that. I know people personally that would be very unhappy to see that imbalance on 3 of our subcommittees. I would prefer to be on policy and negotiations. I understand what you're saying about time, but I think time management is the responsibility of each individual.
Okay, so would you have a suggestion for switching with somebody or a request to switch with somebody? Because again, this was purely what people volunteered to ask for. This was not me putting anybody anywhere, again, except for the 1 liberty.
Oh.
Do you have any suggestions or thoughts, Ms. Ryder, while you have the floor still?
Well, just that, as I said, having 3 Chatham people on 2 of the subcommittees is an imbalance, I'm happy to step off of finance.
Okay. So if Ms. Ryder steps off of finance, is there a member from Harwich who would be willing to step into that role? That would be Ms. Richardson, Mr. Craffey, or Ms. Stout. Apparently, that's a no. So, while I understand what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, we could have a subcommittee of 3, and therefore it would be 2 Chatham members and 1 Harwich member. I did put, I actually took a second liberty with the signing of the payroll and the warrants, because I know Ms. Zivrat Long did that last year. You would only be doing as the alternate signer, because at the moment, Mr. Duvall can actually not sign warrant and payroll, or he can't sign payroll, he can sign warrants. So the thing that we did, I figured that if you would still be willing to continue on with the payroll signatures every other Wednesday. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Richardson.
Regarding my appointment on the policy committee, I had very mixed emotions when I sent the thing in. I weighed, and I finally said, I'll let you decide, because, so if it's fair that you want to go for 3, I don't mind coming off policy.
Okay, so we have a Ms. Richardson coming off of policy, which would be put in...
But I can't do finance. I was just trying to pick committees that I felt I would have value.
And that's what my goal was, to have everybody request what they would like to do instead of me assigning them, although we might be assigning you onto finance. Just because I love you so much.
your own hold on it.
Is there any
Yeah, I
other
do that.
options of people switching? Ms. Ryder did mention the policy, the finance, and then the negotiations. Is that the other one you're referring to, as having 3 in 1?
Correct, there's 3 Chatham people and only 1 Harwich person.
I would fully expect that not all 4 of us will be present at every negotiation. Specifically, Mr. Duvall cannot be at the Unit A negotiations. So that would actually reduce that. And again, I'm open to conversation and switching and trading and swapping, so. Except for Ms. Richardson.
All subcommittee reports come to us at the end anyway, and we all vote on it at the end, so it would just be what they're proposing. So if it was an unweighed subcommittee, I mean, we're all going to have to vote anyway, so does it really matter? I mean, I just, observation, I don't know. Does that mean the policy committee goes down to 3 people, or do we have to be at 4?
It does not have to be at 4 people. It cannot be more than 4 people, because that would make it a quorum of the full school committee. So 4 or less is the best way to go about it, in my personal opinion. But we would have on the policy Sharon, Jackie, Steve, and Karen. So that would be 4. So is that what you were?
Oh, Karen's switching to policy now from finance?
I believe Ms. Richardson yielded her request for policy in lieu of finance.
No, that's not what I said. You missed that.
Sorry, I misinterpreted
I am
here.
willing to relinquish my policy seat,
Okay.
period.
I just keep trying to see if maybe you might change your minds.
Which one are you taking? You can't just give one up and not take
Ms.
one
Long,
down.
Ms. Ryder.
I noticed that in the liaison column, Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, the Harwich liaison is traditionally the vice chair.
That is
That
correct.
should be Donna.
Ms. Richardson actually specifically requested to not be
Oh,
on
you
that.
did? I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. Okay.
I did in the writing to her.
Okay.
on
I
the thing.
just thought you would be the most appropriate person.
And actually, Mr. Russell requested to be on it. He was the only one to request to be on it. Therefore, and Ms. Richardson was the one that requested to not. So again, this was the request list. This was not my making up list. Yes, Ms. Ryder?
I would have requested to be the liaison had I known that those spots were open. I thought it was chair and vice chair, because that's what I was told last year. very
Typically, it
clearly.
is the chair and the vice chair, and in this particular situation, and last year, Mr. Duvall actually was the liaison for the entire school year last year, and he was not vice chair. So I do agree with you that it is typically chair and vice chair, and I don't think it has to be in essence. Ms. Richardson?
I did not know about that rule. I mean, maybe I'll learn something, so if that's,
You know, actually, I think it might be a good idea. We could put Mr. Russell and Ms. Richardson on, and they could kind of work together, because I know Mr. Russell has done it in the past and has a relationship with the selectmen. Yes?
I have no problem with either way. As far as the breakup, I think Karen has a point, but I would, it's a long struggle to involuntarily assign folks to have a balance of 2, 2, and 2. And as a result, I would agree with Jackie that at some point, especially for a year, that all of these vote, that there's conversation, like take, for example, negotiations. But it all comes back to the school committee. So I see if there is 2 folks from Chatham and only 1 from Howard, or vice versa, I think we're not doing irreparable harm to the balance, especially when you're trying to honor individual desires first.
Ms. Ryder?
I will just comment that there is a lot of discussion that goes on in the subcommittees that doesn't come to the full committee, and it would be valuable to have an equal balance. I understand that it's difficult to make these assignments, so, I will grant you that. But I just wanted to point that out, that there is a lot of discussion that happens that might be valuable to have, an equal representation from both towns in the subcommittees.
Thank you. Ms. Long?
Ms. Ryder, would minutes for each meeting that are provided to the other committee members work? If that were the case, would that cover any discussion that's happening?
If you look at the minutes and what's supposed to be in the minutes, it's not anywhere close, no.
Any further discussion on the subcommittees, or are we doing with the changes that were suggested, presented, offered? So the changes that I have is Ms. Ryder is coming off the finance committee, the finance subcommittee with no Harwich replacement. And on policy, we have Ms. Richardson coming off of the policy subcommittee, Ms. Ryder adding on to the policy subcommittee. And then the special education pack, we have Mr. Craffey volunteering as a liaison. And then we're also going to add Ms. Richardson as a additional liaison for Harwich with Mr. Russell. And maybe Mr. Russell eventually would step down once Ms. Richardson has that comfort level. Any further discussion on this? Is everybody okay with this this would be for the school year, the 17-18 school year? Ms. Stout?
My question is slightly divergent from that. Since you have these in 3 different categories, am I interpreting this correctly, that the people on the subcommittee all have a subcommittee vote? The people that are representatives have a vote on those committees, but the liaisons are just bringing information back and forth, but not a vote?
That's where I was going with the descriptions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Ryder?
I will just say thank you for breaking these down. I think this is better, subcommittees, representatives, liaisons.
You're welcome.
Good job on that.
Thank you. All right, so we will leave that. That is set. I don't believe we need a vote on it. Does anybody feel they need a vote? I think we have a consensus vote of it. Thank you. All right, we will move into subcommittee reports. And we do have a superintendent evaluation subcommittee report. Ms. Long,
Oh, yes, thank you.
in case you forgot it was you.
I did for a minute. So after our meeting, if anybody wants to get out their calendar, I just have some dates for everyone to make note of as far as the evaluation process going forward. Starting June 22nd, we will have our regular school committee meeting, and at that time, Ms. Scott will give us a reminder of the evaluation process. On June 28th, Mr. Carpenter's self-evaluation is due. And at that time, we will, by July 1st, we will all receive the end-of-cycle evaluation packets. And also included, that's from Nancy, and we will also be provided with Mr. Carpenter's self-evaluation, and his binder will be available in the office by June 28th to review. July 13th is our regularly scheduled school committee meeting. August 1st will be our committee evaluations due, giving us a month to complete them. And we will get those to Nancy via email, handing them off to her, getting them to her in some way, whatever works for you. August 10th, and that summarizes.
Thank you,
Fewer
Ms.
words, bold type.
Bulleted. Very well, thank you. Last day of school. It's
12. And 4 days, when you're kind of stepped up.
the agenda is we do need to go coming up for adjournment only